Welcome back, Tiny Litters, Two-Headed Giant Lovers. This time, we couldn't pass up an opportunity to play some dueling Geists versus Rob playing Sydri, Galvanic Genius, and his teammate Brian playing Alesha, who smiles at death. Today, she's going to be smiling at Jim playing his Geist of Saint Traft deck, and myself playing my Geist of Saint Traft deck. Now, I'd like to think in Tiny Litters as well, hopefully in Commander, generals can be built and played in different ways. That is not the case this time, as Jim and I pretty much built the same deck. I checked out his list afterwards, and yeah, there's only a few differences. Maybe these are just the optimal builds. That doesn't necessarily mean that the decks are going to have a cohesiveness in Two-Headed Giant, though. We shall see. Rob is going a more controlling route with his Sydri deck, and I think Brian is a little more creature-based to interact more with Alesha. Team Sydri Alesha win the die roll and choose to play first, meaning they won't draw their first turn despite multiplayer. And we choose to start at 35 life. Seems about right. Brian and Rob both play tap lands their first turn. On our first turn, Jim keeps mana up for our opponent's turn while I tap out for preordain, setting up my hand a little bit more. Brian plays and uses Arid Mesa for Godless Shrine and deals his team 3 damage. Brian casts Bitter Blossom, which we don't want to hit the field, so Jim casts Spell Snare, which Rob remands, putting it back to Jim's hand and drawing Rob a card. Rob pays a life for his own sack land. The Bitter Blossom then lands. I play Seachrome Coast, and Jim loses us 2 life with Hallowed Fountain. Everyone is dealing their team's damage with lands. Jeez. Still keeping up his Spell Snare, Jim is free to tap 1 land to play Ponder to try to find his next land card. Brian loses a life on his next upkeep, makes a fairy with his enchantment, and casts Vampire Nighthawk. As Jim and I discuss what to do about it. We agree we don't want him to have it, as it not only blocks and kills Geist, or even the Angel, but it will also recover them some of the life they've lost so far this game. We decide not to counter it, and I just Vapor Snag it back to Brian's hand at the end of their turn. And I also Brainstorm. Rob does nothing for the turn. I play and use Flooded Strand on my turn to cast Mirran Crusader, and Rob, who obviously has counter magic up, casts Mana Leak, which Jim spell snares. We pass the turn with Jim leaving 2 mana up. Another fairy and 1 life loss on Brian's upkeep, followed by Wall of Omens for a blocker and a card for Brian. Rob and Brian both miss their 4th land drops, but what Rob does land is True Name Nemesis, naming me. Unfortunately, TNN is much worse than 2HG, since Jim can still kill it no problem. At the end of the turn, Jim Witch Enchants, Disenchants Brian's Bitter Blossom. On our turn, Jim and I both play untapped lands. Jim casts Psionic Blast on the True Name, killing it and dealing us 2 damage. I then attack into Brian's wall, and then cast Stoneforge Mystic, getting Sword of Feast and Famine, mostly for the untap effect, since my Crusader already has pro black and green. On their turn, Brian runs Sin Collector into my Essence Scatter. Missing yet another land drop, Rob main phase casts Thirst for Knowledge, and it's at this point of the game where I realize that Jim and I are going to win. Rob finds his next mana, and Brian attacks us for 2 damage. On our next turn, I cast Sword of Feast and Famine, equip it to the Mystic, and attack for 7. Brian discards, and I untap my lands. Jim is the first to cast his commander this game, Geist of Saint Traft. Rob casts Mystical Tutor at the end of a turn, but in response, Jim breaks Marsh Flats, 4 land and a damage, and casts Mental Misstep to counter it. Rob plays a land and casts Vindicate to blow up my sword, but sadly he only has 2 mana up, and I mana leak it. Rob then casts Trainer's Edict to make Jim sack his commander, but I cast my last counterspell with Memory Lapse to put it back on top of Rob's library. At least this way, Jim will have another turn to get another creature on the field. Brian recasts Vampire Nighthawk and then attacks for 1 damage with a fairy. On our turn, I cast Seal the Godhead on Jim's Geist. We then attack. Brian blocks the Angel with a fairy token since that is the only creature he can block. They take 11 damage, and we gain 4 life from lifelink. On their turn, Rob wants to cast his Trainer's Edict again, but first Brian wants to cast Tide Hollowsculler to remove counter magic from Jim's hand. We let through because Jim not only has Counterspell, but also Cyclonic Rift, so no matter what, Jim will either be able to counter the Edict or bounce the Tide Hollowsculler and then counter it anyway. When they realize this, Rob and Brian both concede, since we had lethal on the board next turn. And that's the game. It was a bit of an interesting interaction playing the same commander in a 2-headed giant game. I think in a legal 2-headed giant tournament, you're probably not allowed to play the same commander twice for reasons like this. It turned out that 2 mostly control decks, yeah, they actually do coheve pretty well. Jim and I had no shortage of both counter but removal too. Not only that, but we were doing more than our fair share of damage. It may not be a true victory since both Rob and Brian were short on lands, but Geist is one of the best commanders in the format. Okay, that's it for now, and if you want, you can check out more games of Tiny Leaders here. And for our viewer who said he's disappointed about not getting outtakes at the end of the video, please enjoy this extended sequence after the credits. Thanks, and remember to clone way it up. Alright.
Trainer's Edict.
No.
Two leg. Save.
Take that back. Take that back.
Yeah, take it.
Okay.
Okay.
Take that back.
Tide Hollowsculler.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
What is
clear this.
Okay.
So,
My worry is he just has.
yeah, and
And then
then,
just do that. And
Well,
then
then
just
we'll
do that.
Yeah.
yep.
I think that's what we do.
I think that's what we do.
Okay.
Because he can't, there's no way Barlow can respond. That's a sorcery, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, yeah. What are you holding in? Oh, yeah, he could.
No, do it in response to casting that. You can't do it at instant speed. So I think we're good.
Okay, wait, run me through that one.
You let it happen.
Okay.
It's the worst case scenario. He takes this.
Okay.
He casts that in response to me. That then he casts that.
I don't know one of these look like.
Okay.
That works.
So
all right.
we're good with Tide Hollowsculler.
All right.
Oh, I'm picking Tristan. Hey, look at this.
No, I don't know your strategy specifically.
Yeah, we just lose to that.
I care.
Or-
I would like them to, if we get paired.
You want to do this and then you make the way for it? Because you got another counters.
I would like them to turn it off. Like, right? Like I would like them to close it. That's like coming through.
Yeah, but I think they just figured out that they can just bounce this to him and get it back in.
I don't care about anything.
Oh,
So it just doesn't matter.
so can we get rid of the... What? Why are you stupid?
They have us dead on board. Unblockable. Can't be blocked by black creature. Can't be blocked by black creature, and we're actually at 10.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh,
Good game.
Okay.
We both had cancel shove. Yeah.
Although we just realized that card is shitty in Two-Headed Giant. I vote for 2 things that you control.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys vote for 2 things that he controls.
That's right. That's a good point.
And True Name Nemesis, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I picked Tristan.
Yeah.
You killed it. Fucking awesome.
Yeah, I know. That's right.